Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I devote my time to raving and ranting about board games, but usually more the latter. This is another one of my speed reviews that I wanted to do for a game that I just sort of bought on the whim. Invincible, the hero building game. I hate these sort of taglines where it's like the deck building game or the hero building game, you know, it's like whatever. But this is basically from the same people who did Dune Imperium. Now, yes, Dune Imperium's not my favorite game ever, but super popular for many. But I was keen to see what else they could make, because it just seemed to be nothing but Dune Imperium, Dune Imperium, Dune Imperium, Dune Imperium. It's like, okay, can we do other things, please? Well, now we got a new game, and it's based on an IP that I really like. I knew nothing about this, this graphic novel or whatever in advance, and I probably still won't read the graphic novels because I prefer to just watch the series. But man, if you have not got Amazon Prime and watched Invincible, we've had 2 seasons of it so far. It doesn't take long to get through them, but this is a superhero series done right in a lot of ways. It's well animated, it is violent, it is gory in places, it does not hold back from dark, topic areas to discuss. But seriously, give this one a look. So definitely I was keen to get into this knowing that the theme is going to be mostly a pasted job, but hey, I like games like Sentinels and the Multiverse and other superhero co-op games like that. This one seemed to be a similar case. In Invincible, you and potentially up to 3 other players, it's solo or co-op, are essentially trying to beat the main baddie. There are various scenarios that you can play, from the original alien force that turn up during the game, I forget what they're called, the Flaxen aliens, to Dr. Seismic, all the way to the likes of Omni-Man, which, is a pretty hard scenario in itself. You play over 3 different zones. They're represented by 3 separate boards, which are basically the different places your character can move to. It's represented by way of a standee, so you have your standee, here's one for like robot, as well as your starter powers, and you have your own player board with certain different moves that you can perform and slots for cubes. Because what this game kind of boils down to is it's essentially a bag building game. So this bag here has, for example, every cube that you get. But what you do is that you start off with 6 black and 3 of each color. Yellow, purple, blue, and orange. Yeah, get it right. You start with these in your bag. And on your turn, you basically draw 3 cubes out of your bag and decide what you want to do with them. So with Rexplode, if I've got 2 yellow, I could put it on there and do a ranged attack for 1 damage. I could put an orange one here for something to train up and learn moves later, etc. And the different powers that you earn will have other slots. But players can do this at any time. They don't have to wait until it's their turn to draw 3 cubes. You effectively do it in real time. There's no timer, but I might decide, I'm not going to draw any cubes until you guys have already sorted out this enemy here. I'll draw them when I'm good and ready. And what happens is that you keep going, doing these separate 3 cubes and putting them on stuff to trigger moves until you get to the point where you might want to stop. Because the 6 blacks are wild, which is great, you can use them on anything, but if you draw 5 of them out during your round, then you crash, you get exhausted, you slump to the floor, and you have to be rescued by someone else, otherwise you'll take more damage at the end of the round, but basically you're not allowed to draw any more cubes. Crashing is bad. You want to hope that somebody can rescue you in that time. The villains then have their own phase where they can basically just, more stuff will come out by way of event cards. The villains will do damage, they'll endanger civilians, probably kill them off. Yes, this is a game in the series where the collateral damage to civilians is high, trust me. After you're done with all your hero turns, you then have the opportunity to train. So there are basically a big deck of superpowers as well as a deck full of ultimate powers, so even more powerful stuff. All of these cards are unique. You have a hand size of 5, and basically from these you will decide how much of this particular green, what they call, I think they call it coordination or competence or whatever, I don't know, but basically training points to learn new powers. So I could learn Overpower, Whip Flare, Mental Mastery, Turn the Tide, Lightning Blast, all sorts of different ones, and these are all unique as well as all the ultimate powers. But you don't have to have the ultimate powers until you play the full game. There is a special tutorial mode in the game when you open the box that will guide you through your first game with most of the rules, not all of them, and get you into it nice and quick. It's the one I used and I thought it worked quite well. But then once you've started training for powers, then the villain has an event deck, which causes the villain cards that appear to, damage people, to damage your heroes, to endanger and kill civilians. Yes, in this series, the collateral damage to the civilians is very, very high, which is kind of one of the great things about the series. It actually treats it with a more mature adult theme. Seriously, go watch this series. It's amazing. But you know, the villains will get to do their thing, and then the episode timer moves on. You have only so much time to get through the scenario before you automatically lose, but you've also got to make certain that you don't KO 3 times, and not too many civilians can become casualties, because you can lose then. You have to essentially complete the scenario objectives, which usually involves killing the main bad guy in some respect by the time it gets to the end, and of course, you win or lose. Win by one means, lose by half a dozen. That's the way it is. As a co-op game, Invincible does generate a lot of interaction with the players. You're constantly discussing with each other, right, well, what do you need to do first? I need to go kill this person. You move over here, but how am I going to move over there? Well, you need to draw some cubes and get that. I'll wait for you to do it, and then you do it. So there's a lot of like timing discussion between the players, although if you get people that are a little bit slow and not able to sort of like grasp the game quite at first, you might find that they go a bit out of sync with the whole cubes thing, and it does lead to some scenarios where even though the book is clear that you can resolve them in any order you like, there will be a lot of times where somebody who's not quite so quick at looking at their 3 cubes might fall behind the actions of certain other players, and it's like, oh, hang on, but I could do this if you like. You sure you want to do that just yet? A lot of that will happen, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. If you play solo, you don't have to worry about that, although you do have the annoyance of having to draw out of 2 separate bags with the cubes, but, you know, you get over that quite quick. You've got a decent amount of scenarios in here, about 7 or so scenarios that, you know, basically are, you know, victory or loss. You can augment the difficulty by having helper cards or having challenge cards to make it easier or harder at your discretion. There's already 3 levels of difficulty, so the variety is there. The variety is definitely there with these powers. I mean, there is a lot of unique powers in here, along with the ultimate powers, which are really cool to have. You've got 4 characters. The characters could have maybe felt a little bit different from each other. You know, they've got a couple of starter cards and maybe like a special ability each. That's certainly different, but their boards are pretty much the same. I mean, it's like, oh, Rex can thwart, Invincible can't. You know, Atom Eve has a ranged rescue, everybody else doesn't. It's like they're very minor differences, and it's staying to its name of the hero building game. It is essentially trying to be about building your hero up from scratch with lots of different powers. I mean, you know, you could turn Robot into a complete combat powerhouse, or you could make him a healer support character. It's entirely up to you and what cards you draw. What can annoy some players, though, is the luck aspect. The luck aspect of the cubes is, like I say, the nature of the beast when it comes to these bag building games, because I might have a bag that's mostly full of coloured cubes, and during each round in the training phase, you'll be able to add more cubes to your bag that aren't black, so you can basically do more powerful things as the game goes on, and some cards might even give you more coloured cubes on top of that. But you still might have a situation where you reach into this bag and draw 3 black cubes at once. Or, you know, it's like, I've got about 20 cubes in here and only 6 of them are black. And your first 2 pulls and suddenly you end up with 4 of your blacks. It's like, come on, seriously, how did that happen? And, you know, crashing can be a very painful thing to happen, because for some reason, crashing has you roll a d6 and that's how much damage you take. That's a weird mechanic. I don't quite get why it's so random and how that works. And, you know, you can even roll a +1 on the die, which means you get 1 damage and then roll again. So this is like, you know, you could be rolling a ton of damage. You could practically KO yourself in 1 crash if you're not careful. It just seems weird why it's a random effect. But, you know, the luck aspect you have to deal with. Sometimes you're just going to have a situation where you need to do stuff and you draw really unlucky and it's like, whatever. If you're not comfortable with that, this game's not going to be for you. And certainly there were some times when that got on my nerves as well. I mean, you draw cards at random, you know, there's a luck at the draw there, but this is something you are doing constantly, and it's not the most forgiving game in the world. I mean, if you play this on easy, you should be able to do the scenario fairly easily. It's not that difficult at all. But once you start going up the difficulty ratings or throwing in the challenge cards, you're not really going to want your turn hosed by, you know, luck of the draw of the bag too often. But it's just something that you can tailor as you want, but you're going to have to accept that that is in the game. It's a thing. Deal with it. The mission variety is fine. There's not a huge amount of difference between the scenarios apart from who you're fighting. Most of the episodes spawn random villains, so there's, you know, if you're someone who's really tied to the lore, you might think, well, hang on, why are we fighting these minions now? It doesn't quite make sense. You know, you're going to have to, like, take that with a little pinch of salt, because this could have been any theme regardless. You know, the IP is fine, and it certainly does, you know, get me discussing this series if anybody else around the table has seen it before. But yeah, you could have made this a Sentinels in the Multiverse game, you could have made this generic superheroes, you could have made this Marvel, DC, whatever, and it wouldn't have changed anything about this, apart from the fact that you would just use different screen caps, because there's no artwork in the game, it's all screen caps from the series. But I think that kind of works really with the idea of, you know, using an animated show. But then you look at some of these pictures and some of them make sense, but then some of them don't make any sense at all. So it is, you know, a little bit random in that respect. Component quality certainly could be a bit better. I mean, you've just got fairly generic cubes, basic cardboards. The cardstock is fine. You may want to sleeve it though, because there's a lot of activity with it. Really, the main thing that's good from a component perspective is the bags. You know, they're pretty sizable and they're pretty sturdy and they seem to be doing the job. But this is Direwolf Digital, who, if you've played Dune Imperium, didn't exactly make that game a looker either. So, you know, you are just going to have to take the rough with the smooth on that. Overall, it's a decent game. It's nowhere near up to par to something like Sentinels in the Multiverse. That one has far more variety, far more tactical decisions that you can make. Here, you are kind of limited by what cubes you draw. Your abilities are pretty limited on your board. It's not until you start getting some of these powers that, you know, things start getting more interesting. But even then, you only have room for 1 yellow, 1 blue, and 1 orange, and a couple of flex slots for storage, for rearranging. So you've only really got 3 powers plus maybe an ultimate that you're using on a regular basis, and it's like, yeah, it would have been nice if I could have used more or played cards from my hand during the round to do more cool stuff. Like, I really need a yellow cube right now. Well, I don't have a yellow cube at the moment, but I do have a yellow card in my hand. What if I could discard the card to substitute for a yellow, and then I've got less cards for round, or perhaps this is just another way to use cards that you don't want. It's, you know, little things like that might have been quite cool. But overall, it's a solid game. It takes a while. It's not the shortest game in the world. You're definitely looking at something like a 90-minute timer to play a 4-player game of this, because even though there's only 6 or 7 rounds in a typical scenario, you're doing a lot of discussing. I find it's fine. I don't think it's amazing, but I do get, you know, some cool stuff out of this. I think I'm giving it overall a 7 out of 10. It's a good game. I just don't think it's quite amazing. It's definitely not going to, you know, like cater to the likes of something like Sentinels in the Multiverse. I mean, that's a 10 out of 10 for me, and that is like an upper benchmark for this kind of thing. But it's cool. I mean, the luck aspect is a bit of annoying at times. You know, I would have liked better component quality, and yes, the IP is there, but I can't give it brownie points because it's an IP I like, when the IP is just kind of there as a pasted job or anything. So yeah, it's decent. Expansions down the line could make this better with some more powers and more characters. I mean, let's face it, if you've seen Invincible, you know there's a giant roster of characters we could use. I would be more down to see what it could do. But for now, it's a decent base game, just nothing amazing. I've seen some reviews go mad for this with like 9 out of 10s. I'm not quite seeing that, but, you know, I could certainly see somebody going up to an 8 out of 10 and saying this is great. For me, it's a 7. Still good, still worth a try. You know, maybe a little bit pricey for what's in the box, but still a good bit of fun. Seriously, watch the series. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek. Please do share the video and let people know of this game and of the channel. Check out the rest of the content I've been doing, like the speed reviews. This format seems to be going pretty well, so I will stick with it for games that don't have a lot to talk about or aren't official review copies. You know, I will basically cherry pick the ones that I want to do, but yeah, it's allowing me to put more content out, so I'm all up for that. Let me know your thoughts on the game itself. Do you really enjoy it? Is this bag building aspect going to put you off? Do you love the series? Do not post any spoilers for the series in the comments. Do not do that. I will delete any comments that do. But seriously, get Amazon Prime and you know, get Amazon Prime, get some free deliveries, watch The Boys, watch some other like really cool series on Amazon at the moment. But seriously, watch this. And Has Been Hotel. And was Arcane? No, Arcane was Netflix. I don't know. There's a lot of good shows on Amazon Prime. Just watch it, but watch this one first. Take care, and remember, as always, regardless of whether you are or not, it's still only a game. So bye for now.